Are you going to start it the same way we always do?
Yeah, it is Mojo Monday. Rick Hale, how are you?
I'm doing very well. I'll try to change up my choice of terminology. Man, exceedingly well.
Exceedingly well. There you go. All right. Well, man, last week we did we're still in this book, The Algebra of Happiness by Scott Galloway. And um last week we did a session on the imposter syndrome. It actually came up a couple times in conversation this week. Uh, I just love how our series and when we started doing these, we thought we'd run out of content. Like I actually thought, man, what are we going to talk about over and over and over? But everything just kind of lends itself to the next thing, right? So today we're really kind of talking about value, and there's a section in this book called Know Your Worth. Why don't you set us up here, Rick?
Well, there's the intrinsic value that you feel when you look in the mirror and you go, here's my skills, my assets, my core genius, the things that make me unique, the things I've studied for in school, and the things that I'm prepared to do because of my experiential life and self-reflected value. And then there's the value that the universe actually literally pays for
Yeah,
all those things. And so
yeah.
you could work at QT for, I don't know, I think they pay well, I've heard lately, but 15 an hour, or you could go sell houses or some other high dollar product and make 500 or 1,000 or more per hour. And it's relative to the behavior and the consensus of the consumer.
100%. So in the book, he talks about how he's a professor at NYU and in the Stern College of Business. And right now he's acutely aware his star is bright and his value is high. And he says, listen, I'm aware at some point in time, my star won't be as bright, or previous times, my star wasn't as bright. So our relationship with value kind of goes up and down over time based on relevancy, based on consumerism. We're going to kind of dive into that. But the reality is we've got to have awareness around our relationship with our worth. And I know you talk a little bit about this in the book around dollar per hour. Maybe we should go there first.
Yeah, let's start there. So, one of
Yeah.
the concepts, if you're going to craft a version of yourself that's worth more or just earns more, it starts with that inside conversation. Remember, we talked about the intrinsic a minute ago. But if that number, again, doesn't reflect a consumer's vote to invest or pay that amount, it's irrelevant. That's like a version of false ego. Yeah, I'm worth $5,000 per hour. And you're like, but if nobody's buying it, you're not. And so
Yeah.
we have an honest conversation when we stage that future self exercise in the workshop. And the honest conversation is write down on paper what you're worth per hour. And listeners do this, write it down now. And then the question inevitably is, well, how do I know? And the answer is simple. If you want to look in the rear view, at least historically supported, and in the current market, a year ago, you might have been worth more because the market was a little more robust and a lot of low fruit. But take the last 6 months, divide, calculate roughly how many hours you invested in your work and divide it into the money that you made. And theoretically, not theoretically, in reality, that's what you're worth per hour in the current scheme.
Yeah. If I've ever learned anything in life, there's no straight line in business. It goes up, it goes down. We maneuver, whether it's our value, our worth, our profits, our income, they all just don't necessarily go straight, right? And
Oh, yeah, one constant is change, right?
of course, right? But you brought something up. You say what consumers will pay. Um, so I think there's a formula here that says uh, I'm going to charge this price minus what it costs me to do it or make it or whatever the
Product
cost
or service.
associated. And then there's a gap, right? And that gap is basically my profit or my value or my worth. And we're looking for that fair trade. We want to be paid as abundant as possible. Yet the consumer, it actually probably approaches that conversation a little bit with scarcity, saying, I want to pay as least as possible. So
Yeah.
then we're looking for that in between fair trade, right? And we're in the real estate space, but you could take this to any industry, right? Like the auto industry, or if I just made gadgets and took them to the local farmer's market to sell, it's the same analogy, right?
Yeah, of course. And so it also depends on whether you have a unique angle or position, or that's where marketers get paid super money. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't connect the dots between just Aflac and the duck. Like, does that really inspire people to call Aflac and go, look, I'd like you to handle my insurance because that duck's so damn funny. But some marketers somewhere convinced that, the company to invest millions in that campaign. And so part of it is the reality of the product and what it can actually do, or service if it's you're helping support people in making important decisions. And the other half of it is the spin. How does it make me feel? Does the experience warrant a premium? And that's a hypothetical question that we should all be asking ourselves. Is our premium so good that it's undeniably valuable to a consumer? You're selling tomatoes at the farmer's market. I think you mentioned a farmer's market. You better have really special tomatoes if you're going to ask for more money than the rest of the tomato sellers, on the aisle or row that's selling tomatoes. And so they have to either sell out, or you have to really spin it up. So that's the story. That's the story.
And Rick, I mean, you could walk down any grocery store aisle and look at tomatoes. We'll just stay on tomatoes for a minute. There's a lot of different tomatoes and they're all priced differently. So how do people make their choice, right?
Well,
And it has
packaging and
everything to do with
presentation.
value. Right.
Yeah.
So let's go back to our worth for a minute. So I think there's a current dollar per hour, meaning the last 12 months, you and I've talked through this, like the last 12 months, this was my income. This was the amount of time I put towards it. Divide the two, tells me what I'm worth per hour, right? And I'm either going to be excited about that, I'm going to be disappointed in that, or I'm going to have a neutral feeling around that. But the real conversation is, what's the future dollar per hour I'm worth? So take me there.
That just means understanding, again, consumer needs and wants and being able to deliver on those promises. If you're going to improve it, there's certain behavior or a certain product or an elevated marketing scheme around your product that gives you a competitive advantage that consumers want more of. I mean, I don't know, this just hit me, man. Remember the day when Pet Rocks came out?
Oh, yeah.
People were buying little rocks. They're buying rocks, but because it was vogue and cool, and it sort of reflects back to the author's statement that, hey, I'm in style and I'm cool right now and in demand. So were Pet Rocks. Yeah. And so that is a straight up marketing play. You could go in the backyard and probably find a fine rock and it's free. But it goes to show someone figured out a way to make Pet Rocks cool. And Beanie Babies, another example of silliness that, people still have hundreds of them and supposedly they still hold value. I don't know how. But the point is, you've got to, here's another interesting take on this conversation. When you analyze your dollar per,
and see where you go next. You went from rocks to Beanie Babies.
Well, I'm just saying it's perception of value. That's what I want people to hear, that half of it is, and I think if you can back it up with real value, like functional utility or something that makes your life better, more efficient, more effective, sexier. People buy sexy. We know that. Or the experience is efficient and they don't use up a lot of time and energy achieving the same goal. Those are compensating factors that will allow you to charge more and get it. But you've got to have that differentiation. And to your point, it's a moving target. And I remember Gary saying this at one point. He's like, if your business is not actually going up and improving, it's probably going down. And that's an odd. So in other words, if you're flat right now, you're probably not improving your business because someone is. And so you're not the only one sitting around having this conversation in their head and with their target audience, if you will, about how to create an enhanced experience or product. Or there's that guy, there's always that guy that's going to sell everything at half price and hope to win in the volume game.
That's true. I want to take this a left turn for a minute.
Blinkers on.
All right. We're talking about knowing our worth and understanding our value and our dollar per hour. But I also believe there are times where people will attack our value or attack our worth. And whether if I'm selling cars, somebody inevitably is going to walk in and try to undercut paying what the car's worth. Or if I'm selling the tomatoes at the farmer's market, somebody's going to walk up to the fruit stand and say, I only have $2. And, they're going to try to wheel and deal, right? And then our emotional state or our logical state of how we approach that attack kind of has everything to do with how our value in the future looks like, right? But if you
Yeah.
take it to real estate for a minute, inevitably somebody's going to try to put pressure on commission rates at a listing table, or put pressure on commission if we're dealing with builders, or put pressure on commission if we're dealing with buyers, right? And we don't even have to go into specifics. I think people just kind of understand the analogy, but the question is really, what do we do? How do we approach? How should we be thinking about that when somebody attacks our value?
Well, for one, confidence is incredibly attractive. So if you're confident in your value proposition, have a historical track record that speaks to that value, and you can, with confidence, look someone in the eye and say, here's why working with me creates a difference in your life: quality of life, time saved, save money. Maybe you're an incredible, negotiator, but you have to be able to monetize, quantify, and show them with either a data chain or testimonials from peers that have used you in the past that they can relate to. And if you can't, you're only as good as the lowest common denominator, because they will find that watermark, if you will, for value versus price. And one of my favorite sayings on the planet that I've used countless times: cost only matters in the absence of value. And I will say this, that scarcity is incredibly attractive. So there's only you, and no one else can be you. So the fact that you're not available to everyone has value. People are actually putting more stock or value on fear of loss. Fear of loss is a more compelling motivator than opportunity. And so if you really are convicted in your value proposition, have a track record and proof, the simple answer is, we may not be a match. I may not be the right person for you. Let me see if I can refer you to someone who, has a different value proposition, possibly a different experience and outcome. And if it's worth it to you, I respect your decision.
Absolutely.
It's the walk away. It's a powerful place to be as a salesperson, but you better have backup business ready in case they do walk away.
Yeah. And I'm going to take it just a slight different take on this. I love the confidence part. I think the more confident and the more firm we are in knowing our value, the easier it is to dispel an attack on value, right? However, I also think sometimes I should take a hint, or I should take a clue into maybe my communication's not up to par. Maybe my presentation of my value proposition's not up to par. And sometimes I need to level up. And maybe this is one of those moments where I need to take my professionalism a notch higher. Maybe I need to make my presentation a notch higher. Maybe I need to make my communication around it a notch higher to hear that people are coming after me. And how do I present better? How do I communicate and help them connect the dots that I am worth what I charge?
So one is know your competition. I think that's the number one way in doing, benchmarking your product or service against others. Again, it's an evolving picture. So if you think what worked last year is going to work this year, you might be sadly and sorely mistaken. And so I think it's a constant pursuit of better, and a constant pursuit of perfection, knowing you'll never get there because it's evolving. But if, again, part of this is recognizing trends in the marketplace against your personal trend and success story. And if you're not tracking at or above the market, you're not winning. And it's just a slow demise. And so
100%.
comparative analysis, we call it R&D, rip off and deploy. And the other piece of advice is be careful not following the same line of ducks. You quack like a duck, you move like a duck, you're a duck. And what I'm speaking to is your industry or your area of expertise. My advice is go look at eagles, go look at, crocodiles. How are they succeeding? And I'm using that as a, obviously an analogy, but what other industries are winning big with people today? What is vogue and hot, and how do their tactics how are they potentially migratory into your scheme or strategy that differentiates you from all of the other people in your field?
Yeah, 100%. So, Rick, I think we should just kind of summarize this conversation with, I think, one, you need to be really clear about your worth and spend some time thinking about it, whether it's just taking a calculator and calculating your income by hours spent, or putting some thought into where you're going and how to raise that dollar per hour or that worth, right?
Yep.
But I also think, where are people putting pressure on your value too? You should pay attention. Don't be naive around it, and go do something about it, right?
Yep. That's how you validate. You validate, again, the ultimate vote is that of a consumer. And if they're not voting your way, it's either cost or value. One of the two, or you're missing the mark in one of those two buckets.
There you go. Rick Hale, Mojo Monday, my friend.
Mojo Monday, Brett. Have a great one. Hope you guys have an amazing week.
With my head up in outer space, I know